Our next presenter for today is DHS PSA Program Director Scott Brewer. Scott currently serves as the Director for the Protective Security Coordination Division, PSCD, within the Office of Infrastructure Protection at the Department of Homeland Security. Mr. Brewer is responsible for the day-to-day business and management of infrastructure security specialists known as Protective Security Advisors, or PSAs, and the Office for Bombing Prevention. Prior to PSCD, Mr. Brewer served as the Deputy Director for the Infrastructure Security Coordination Division, ISCD, which was responsible for the execution of the Chemical Facility Anti-Terrorism Standard that imposes comprehensive federal security regulations for high-risk chemical facilities. Please welcome to the podium Mr. Scott Brewer.
Please note I have no notes with me. Chuck said keep it short, and I promised him I would. But I have to, I'm retired Navy. I used to fly P-3s. And so I have to tell a little sea story. And this morning I decided I'm going to come out of the closet. I am, by training, a physicist. And back in 1983, my senior research project was on the effects of solar flares on the magnetic sphere of the Earth. And this is back in 1983. So I had to do this on a typewriter. And I had to take the data from Pioneer satellites, I believe it was 15 and 17. You know, and back then we thought the Pioneer satellites were the greatest thing since sliced bread. I had to take that data and manually put it on graph paper, connect that, you know, with a nice ballpoint pen, go to a copying machine. It's not like back then you had Kinkos at every corner, and try to make nice, like, looking little graphs on standard 8, you know, by 11.5 paper, and then put that in a typewriter and type around it and, you know, address it as a table. So that was painstaking. But back then, I knew what the effects of a solar flare event could do. So I have to ask Chuck, where have you been for the last 30 years? So Chuck asked me because we actually met this summer. Chuck got involved with a regional resiliency assessment program that we're doing out at Ashburn. It's one of the projects that our program gets involved with. And he thought it'd be a good idea for us to come and speak about our program just so folks have awareness, but then to build on the relationship that we are definitely going to continue not only with Chuck's group, but with all the aspects of InfraGard. I came to this program back in January. I have 102 protective security advisors across the U.S. and one in Puerto Rico. In your high metropolitan areas, we have a couple PSAs there. So you can see that's not many folks to cover the U.S. In some states like Colorado, I have one PSA. And that person is responsible not only for having the conduit to the critical infrastructure, but also the lifeline sectors. And as we're seeing now with recent events in Paris and events prior to that, like down in Charleston, really places where people gather. So needless to say, they have a lot on the plate. But it's also for the representatives of InfraGard in the area. You know, they're facing the same thing every day. And back in my day in DOD, you know, yes, we had the Goldwater-Nichols Act, and we were supposed to be joint when we worked with the other services. But I'll be honest, it was not coordination operations, it was deconflict operations. And I think in a lot of places, in a lot of areas, we have been sort of like working like that. We have good relationships with some InfraGard chapters. Others, it's more, you know, they know them. So since this summer, you know, with Chuck's help and working with other folks at InfraGard, we're going to make it a more concerted effort going into 16 to build this relationship stronger. Whole of government was already mentioned today, but if we have an event like EMP, it's going to take that whole of government. And really, that's, at the end, it's the communities. And the communities need to be safe and secure, and we need to do what we can do to ensure that they know what is out there to understand and build resilience. So with our program, we primarily focus on physical security assessments. We do have cybersecurity analysts within DHS. We have recently started working with them to cross-train our protective security advisors, so they will also be able to do cybersecurity assessments. So going into 16, that's a capability and skill set that we're going to be asking of our PSAs. And we also do training. We do training on whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's counter ID, whether it's active shooter, and now with any aspects of EMP that a facility would like to know, any products that come out of InfraGard. Those sources of materials are known to the PSAs, and they can help facilitate that. So I know I only had a couple of minutes. I want to introduce Kyle Wolf. So Kyle, if you could stand up. Kyle, could you stand up? Oh, there. Right. So Kyle is our Protective Security Advisor for the National Capital Region. I actually have to run to go to another engagement. Kyle will be here all day. He can speak further about our program, but more importantly, he's the touch point for what we offer here in the NCR. So with that, thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Introducing our next presenter is Dr. Wallace E. Boston, President and CEO of the American Public University. Dr. Boston was appointed President and CEO of American Public University System and its parent company, American Public Education Incorporated, in July of 2004. He joined APUS as its Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer in 2002. Now, Dr. Boston, if you'd come.
Thank you. It's my pleasure today to introduce Congressman Roscoe Bartlett. Congressman Bartlett served the state of Maryland's 6th District for 20 years, from 1992 to 2002. A graduate of Washington Adventist University, he earned a master's and PhD from the University of Maryland in physiology. I'm proud to say that my parents were and still are residents of the area that he served, although their district was gerrymandered to the 8th District in 2011. Congressman, today I'm presenting you with the American Public University and Policy Studies Organization Sword of Leadership in recognition of your efforts to focus attention on the national power grid and the threats to it. No one has really worked longer and harder than you to make those of us face up to the challenges that our dependence on the grid presents. We hope you'll continue to lead efforts to make the grid secure, and that this Crusader's Sword is recognition of your dedication to this cause. Thank you.
I came to the Congress when Bill Clinton came to the presidency. And at that time, we were pretty aggressively downsizing the military. And one of the things that they did in downsizing the military was to waive chemical and EMP hardening of all of our new weapons systems. I have no idea how I first learned of EMP. When I mentioned it to the committee, at least 2/3 of the Armed Services Committee at that time had never even heard of EMP. So each time that one of the military would come forward, I would ask them, why are you waiving chemical and EMP hardening? Because in any war with a peer, and it's in all of their open literatures and all of their war games, one of the first things they would do is an aggressive EMP laydown, which would deny us the use of all of our non-hardened equipment, which now is all of our new equipment. The only thing that was hardened was the old ancient equipment. In about the year 2000, I was sufficiently concerned about this that in working with Dr. Peter Pry, who was then a senior staff member of the Armed Services Committee, we drafted legislation to set up an EMP Commission. Neither the chairman of the committee nor certainly the staff director wanted this legislation. So they told us, gee, we can't do that because it would require a sequential referral. And nothing in the Armed Services Committee bill requires sequential referral. What that means is it would have to go to other committees because they have some jurisdiction there. And it would never get through those committees in time for the very early, as you notice, the Armed Services Committee bill is one of the first bills that's passed in the Congress. So I asked them, what other committees might it be referred to? And they gave me the names of those committees, and so I went to the chairman of those committees, and I got a letter from each of the chairmen saying that they waived jurisdiction of this. So I brought those letters back, and now they had to put our legislation in, and so we set up the EMP Commission. It functioned, I think, for 6 or 8 years? And I'm really, really gratified now that they are reestablishing that commission. Finally, they recognize that this is really something important to us. Not only is the commission being reestablished, but as you all know, the two important pieces of legislation are active in the current Congress: the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, which has passed the House, and the big H.R. 8, which is a big bill, includes many things. I understand includes the SHIELD Act, has also passed, and now it awaits its future in the Senate. I've been very gratified that I see that a number of states are not waiting for the federal government, which has been pretty slow and I think will continue to be pretty slow. And so these states are now setting up their own programs to do something meaningful in preparing for an EMP attack. There's other legislation that relates to this that's not, where EMP will not even be in the, mentioned in the legislation. One of these is all of the Missile Defense Acts. I was opposed and vocally opposed to the way we were doing ballistic missile defense. We were setting up systems in California and Alaska, and these were to intercept weapons that were coming essentially over the pole. The only nation today, and maybe tomorrow China would be added to that, but today the only nation that would come over the pole is Russia. And they have thousands of missiles, and we might, if we were lucky, shoot down the first, half dozen or so. And so our defenses, as far as Russia is concerned, would be fairly meaningless at the poles. We have been watching Iran and North Korea to see when they would have a missile, a intercontinental ballistic missile, which would reach us. I always come somewhat confused by our focus on that. These people may be evil, they are not idiots. They are not going to launch over the pole. We would know where it came from. If they launch a missile at us, it's going to come from the ocean, probably from a tramp steamer off our coast. And then the tramp steamer will be sunk, and there will be no fingerprints about who did it. So whose country would we bomb if the missile came from the water somewhere? And I'm sure that that's where it would come from. Very interesting little anecdote, and I can't remember the year. I'm not very good at remembering years, but you will know the date because it was when we were involved with war in Europe, and we had three members who were held by Slobodan Milosevic, and I was sitting in a hotel room in Vienna, Austria, with 8 other members of Congress, 3 members of the Russian Duma, and a personal representative of Slobodan Milosevic. By the way, they were released to Jesse Jackson. You remember there were pictures of him holding hands in a prayer circle with Slobodan Milosevic, which really disturbed our Secretary of State at that time, Madeleine Albright. One of the members of the Russian Duma who was there had been the ambassador to this country. And he sat there with his arms folded for 3 days in that hotel room, very angry. And finally he said, if we really wanted to hurt you with no fear of retaliation, we'd launch an SLBM, we'd detonate a nuclear weapon high above your country and shut down your power grid and your communications for 6 months or so. The third ranking communist in the Russia at that time was Alexander Shabanov, a tall, blonde, handsome fellow, and he smiled and said, and if one weapon wouldn't do it, we have some spares. At that time, I think it was about 10,000 spares that they had. Currently, I don't believe we have limited ability to detect a launch off our coast, and I think essentially no ability to intercept a missile that comes from off our coast. I can't imagine either North Korea or Iran launching a missile from their soil, which we would certainly identify and we would know who it came from, when they can so easily launch a much shorter range missile from off our coast where we have little detection capability. As far as I know, no defense capability. Another major threat to our grid, of course, in addition to EMP, is the cyber threat. Ted Koppel just out with a new book, Lights Out, which I'm sure you've all heard about. He says that both Russia and China are now sufficiently hacked into our grid that at any time they wished, they could shut down the grid. And countries like Iran and North Korea are gaining capability, and who knows when they might be able to do that. Of course, the third thing that could shut down our grid is a big solar storm. The granddaddy of all those was in, 1859, described as a Carrington event after Dr. Carrington in England, who identified what it was. There was a near miss, just in 12? It missed us by just a few days. And had it hit our world and had it been active for 24 hours in the northern hemisphere, who knows what it might have done to civilization. The dinosaurs all disappeared a while ago, and it's conceivable that humans might follow them with an event like that. That would have been really, really devastating, would it not? That event, by the way, if it was as big as the Carrington event in 1859, would shut down all of the microelectronics in all of the northern hemisphere if it hit the northern hemisphere and stayed there for a 24-hour spin of the Earth. You know, it's very interesting. I was wondering some time ago why the aggressive use of organisms like the smallpox organism was not more addressed. Only two countries are supposed to have the smallpox virus. That's the United States and Russia. I've been assured with some certainty that China now has it. If an enemy had that, why are they not releasing this virus in our country? It would kill, a third of our people? It would spread very aggressive. You could easily do this. Just come here dressed in garb so only your eyes are showing and you're in the infective stage of it, and visit major public events, and it would just spread like wildfire through our country. And one of the people in this discussion mentioned that maybe they weren't doing this because we were not sufficiently prepared to address this challenge, and it might come back to bite them. That's very interesting, which means that you would have less chance of an attack if you didn't prepare for the attack, because you're inviting the attack if you prepare for it. A similar argument might be made for defense against EMP. If we are aggressively, if a potential enemy has the ability to inflict an EMP event on us, and if we are now preparing for it, would not our preparation perhaps invite an earlier attack? Because if they waited, it might not be effective. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Just recently, I was reading a book in which they mentioned something that I've been familiar with for a very long time, and that's Yamantau Mountain. How many of you have heard of Yamantau Mountain? Yamantau Mountain. Nobody heard of Yamantau? Okay, a couple of hands back there. Yamantau Mountain is about 600 miles about due east of Moscow. It is in the Ural Mountains. It has the largest underground nuclear secure facility in the world. It is as large as inside the Beltway, the Washington Beltway. We've had two defectors from there, and it has train tracks going in two different directions, so they're prepared to move huge amounts of material around there. I've had several briefings while I was in the Congress on Yamantau Mountain. It was started during the age of Brezhnev. It still continues. The current leaders in Russia ski fairly close to that. It was supported by a city that does not even appear on their maps, and they have cities in Russia that don't appear on their maps. Meshkorva, they can't hide it from our satellites, of course. There were 60,000 people in Meshkorva, which means about 20,000 people working on Yamantau Mountain. Today, I think there's about maybe 20,000 people in Meshkorva, which means about 6,000 people working on Yamantau. What in the heck are they doing there? The book I was reading said that they were doing 3 things there. They were aggressively building biological weapons, aggressively building chemical weapons, and they were preparing a site there that they could take the cream of their civilization so that they would have a nucleus to repopulate with after a catastrophic event. Whatever they're doing in Yamantau Mountain, it is very disquieting, is it not? It's a very secret program. It doesn't appear in any of the budgets. Obviously cost a great deal of money. Imagine something as big as inside the Washington Beltway. Huge nuclear secure underground facility. What in the heck is it for? The last briefing I had was that third use, that they're going to bring the cream of their civilization there to repopulate after a catastrophic event. Whatever the intended use of Yamantau Mountain is, it is somewhat disquieting, is it not? Well, I couldn't be more gratified. When I started this journey, 2/3 of the members of the Armed Services Committee have never heard of EMP, and now we have a room full of people committed to making sure that we do something to prepare for this. Thank you very much.